Welcome, gentle viewers, all 4 or 5 of you, to the latest episode of the Small Triumph Sports Library and Archives channel. This is the first video that I'm recording in 2024. I had hoped to post my first video of the year on January 16th, which was the 1-year anniversary of my posting my first video to the channel, but I'm behind schedule on everything these days, and I just didn't quite get that done. This first video of the year is an errata video. I hope that these types of videos become even rarer moving forward, as I hope to do even less shooting first and aiming later. I try really hard not to do that, but it happens from time to time. That said, I'm human. Mistakes are going to happen, and there are going to be things in my videos that I feel like require adjustment or improvement, and so I will come back to them and do cleanup work as I deem it necessary. So I'm sure there'll be more errata videos in the future. In this video, I'm going to clean up several things that I think are noteworthy from my videos last year. And let's get on with it. So hopefully this is the last errata video that I will make for a while. I'm sure I will make mistakes in the future that I will want to clean up on video, but hopefully it'll be a little while. That said, I have not gone back and thoroughly reviewed my earliest episodes in particular. Frankly, I'm not sure I want to exercise my cringe muscles quite that much. But I do recall some things from the early episodes. So for example, I think in the introduction episode, I stated that I was going to aim for producing and posting 1 video per week, which seems incredibly naive and absurd to me now that I have a little bit of experience in the business. Frankly, if I were a full-time YouTuber, I'm not sure I could produce 1 quality video per week, much less with the various obligations that I have, especially at certain times of the year. I could put out 1 video a week if I was willing to push out just any old garbage, but I am trying to maintain some kind of standard. Some of you may question that, haven't seen some of the videos that I've put out, but nevertheless, I am trying to maintain a certain standard. As I said before, I'm making these errata videos occasionally to clean up bigger errors or issues from previous videos. I'm not going to make a video to address every little mistake I make. So, as I said before, I'm not going to make a video in order to correct the time that I said nut when I meant bolt. Or even something like back in episode 14 where I talked about acquiring a pulley for my GT6, when in fact, the correct factory parts catalog terminology is pulley and damper assembly. And that certainly would be more precise and accurate. But those little things, if I catch them in time, I will correct them on screen in video production. And if I don't catch them before the video is posted, I correct them in notes in the video description. Errata videos are for those types of errors or oversights or some kind of fuzziness that rises to a certain level where I think it is worthwhile to correct, to address the problem, to correct the issue, to clarify the issue on video, on screen. Just a couple of quick notes before I get to the main matters I want to address in this video. And these notes both revolve around the first regular video that I posted to the channel. My main motivation for posting that video was my surprise at the fact that when I removed the battery box from my 1969 GT6 Plus, I discovered that a lot of the bottom of the battery box had no primer or paint on it. It was in bare metal. And you can go back to that video and see the actual images that I show of that. Subsequently, I've talked with some folks who have emphasized that at the factory, Triumph put together the cars in bare metal, or in white, I believe is the technical engineering term. And then whatever got primer on it, got primer on it. Whatever got paint on it. As long as there wasn't some aesthetic issue involved, there was no real concern about that. And I'm sure that's probably right. I think part of the reason that I was so surprised is that I know that when you buy a replacement battery box, when you bought one back in factory days, the battery box came in red primer. When you buy a reproduction battery box these days from British Motor Heritage / Steelcraft, it comes in that black Electrocoat medium build primer. So replacement battery boxes, came to you with some protection. I just wanted to, emphasize that I am aware of, sort of the prevailing ideas about how the cars were assembled and all of that. I am still curious about my car a little bit from the standpoint that the backside of the firewall around where the battery box is did seem to have a good coat of primer on it, and yet the nearby battery box had none. That's kind of mysterious to me, but I'm not sure. The other thing I wanted to address very briefly is the fact that I went on and on kind of speculating about the first violent accident that my GT6 suffered, and I really shouldn't have. I was kicking myself almost immediately after I posted that video. First of all, I'm not an automotive accident autopsy expert by any stretch of the imagination. But more important, it's not like I'm looking at the car situated on the scene and able to take in all the evidence and look at the original accident damage. I'm looking at the car after someone has tried to, in a mostly ham-fisted way, repair that accident damage, and then there have been subsequent accidents to the car as well. So I'm really not in a position to offer any really smart analysis of how that original accident happened, and I just kind of regret rambling about that, speculating about that as much as I did in that first video. Those two things briefly established, let's move on to the main things I want to address in this video. So the main cleanup work I want to do in this video involves episode 7. That was my review of the dash that Peter Heary built for my GT6. And my main goal in creating that video is to try to be helpful to Peter, who does fantastic work. Unfortunately, I decided to make the centerpiece of that video the mystery about the proper color of the brake and hazard lettering on the GT6 Plus dash. So at the center of that video, I went on and on about this issue. And the main problem was that when I looked at period photos, it was very clear, especially period photos that were color, it was very clear that the hazard and brake lettering on the dashes was a vibrant white color. That's what it looked like in all of the promotional materials. And I don't consider that to be definitive evidence of anything, but that's what I saw. And then I compared that with original dashes that I had seen in person or that I had seen images of from today, and they typically have hazard and brake lettering that looks kind of gold. And so I went on and on about this mystery and, what is the color, what's the correct color for the dash. And I didn't have an answer for that. As I explained in the video, I had Peter Heary build me a dash with the color of the hazard and brake lettering kind of toned down a little bit, so it's not super bright white. But I didn't really have an answer for the mystery. I posted the video, and not too long after I posted the video, a viewer, Frank Gallo, posted a comment that said the reason that the lettering on original dashes today looks gold is because the polyurethane, the finish on the dash, yellows with age and makes the letters look gold. This stunned me. I hadn't even considered this possibility, but there's a reason why. As I've mentioned numerous times now, I've had my 1980 Spitfire for over 30 years. That car has a lights label on the dash under the appropriate switch. I know the lights lettering on the dash is silk screened in white above the finish. In fact, if you look very carefully at the lettering on the dash, you can see where the edges of the letters have been rubbed off and rounded over the years from wiping the dash and such. So there's no doubt that these letters are white. They're silkscreened on top of the dash finish. Being used to what I had seen on my Spitfire, it never occurred to me that my GT6 Plus dash may have been made differently, but once it was pointed out, everything I had been seeing, all the evidence I had collected, all of the dashes that I had seen in person or images of, everything started to make sense. But in order to sort of test the theory, I pulled out my original GT6 Plus dash. And again, you can see here that the lettering clearly looks rather gold. And I ran my fingers over the lettering. I held the dash panel in different lights. And lo and behold, sure enough, I quickly became convinced that the lettering is beneath the surface of the dash. I knew as soon as Frank made his comment that that was almost certainly accurate, but just had to kind of test it for myself, and definitely seemed to be the case. That not only explains why the lettering of original dashes today generally looks gold or yellow, but it also explains something else that I had noticed on my dash and on images of others, and that is the lettering sometimes is smeared. So my brake lettering on my dash, you can see there, is clearly kind of fuzzy and has some smearing going on in it. And that makes perfect sense if the silk screening was done and then the finish applied to the dash. Sometimes it would smear the lettering. So I consider this mystery to be solved. It's a very simple solution to the mystery. I'm really grateful to Frank for chiming in and pointing this out. And now in retrospect, I wish I hadn't gone on and on about the mystery in my video. However, I didn't know. And I assumed that the dash was made the same way my Spitfire dash was, and I shouldn't have. So lesson learned on that one. So my main purpose here is to clarify some things in my discussion about original versus reproduction, Spitfire 1500, hazard switch knobs from episode 10. Before I get there, though, I have to point out something, which is that in episode 10, I stated that I was testing my hazard switch. I was making sure my hazard switch worked because I was having a problem with the car. And that came out of my mouth quite easily without really thinking about the fact that the problem that I thought I was having with the car was total power loss, in which case having a functioning hazard switch was not going to matter at all. But what can I say? I'm an idiot. But I was testing my hazard switch to make sure it worked. It turns out it wasn't working, and that ended up leading to a video. And in that video, I talked about original versus reproduction hazard switch knobs, and I want to clean that up a little bit now. So at the end of summer, maybe early fall, before I got so swamped with work that I couldn't really play with my cars much, I was digging through some of my old Spitfire parts, and I happened to find the original, what I believe to be the original hazard switch knob from my Spitfire. So that's the one on the far left in the image you're looking at here. You can see it's cracked from over tightening, which is a common thing. I don't know if I was fully responsible for that or if it was started by a previous owner and then I finished it off. I don't know for sure. But the one that came with my car when I got it in 1991 is on the far left. The one in the middle there is the one that I got from Spitbits. It was a Lucas item, came in a Lucas bag. It actually seems to have included the spring inside of it, which the other reproduction knob, the one on the far right in this image, does not come with the spring. But you can see that reproduction when I bought it from Spitbits in 2003. I went and looked that up, and it was really all that was on the market at the time. And then the one on the far right is the one that I purchased from the Roadster Factory, which in appearance is much closer to original, although it's not as exact a copy as I originally thought, and that's what I wanted to call attention to here. So here's another image of these, and one of the things that you will notice is that the original knob is actually more kind of translucent and is a little bit of a brighter red than the best reproduction that I've seen, which is the Roadster Factory one on the far right. And in fact, to demonstrate this, the Roadster Factory one is on the right here, and the original one is on the left, and you can see the original one is far more translucent than the Roadster Factory one. So in the end, the Roadster Factory reproduction is nice. It is much closer to the original than the Lucas one that I got from Spitbits back in 2003, which has that almost black, like very dark cherry, almost black top to it, with a very dark red translucent body. But it is not as exact a copy of the original as I thought, and I just wanted to point that out. So this is not so much a correction as it is a note on episode 13. At one point in that episode, I talked about how at the launch of the GT6, so we're talking about the GT6 Mark I here with its infamous rear suspension, a lot of UK motor journalists complained that Triumph had built the GT6 as a boulevard cruiser for the American market instead of as a hard-edged sports car. I made a note about this in the video description when I posted the video, but here I just wanted to call attention to statements on this matter made by two of the giants when it comes to the preservation of the history of the Triumph Mark, and they would be Graham Robson and Michael Cook. Their statements on the way that the GT6 was originally developed don't really conflict, but they are interesting in terms of the contrast. And so you get a perspective from sort of the UK and the perspective from the American market. So here's Graham Robson's account. Triumph had taken it upon themselves to soften the car to make it more appealing to American tastes. British readers might ask whether there was justification in Triumph being so interested in satisfying American customers, perhaps at the expense of other markets. Triumph's answer to this would always be that that was where the majority of sales were made. Robson writes this in his 1973 book, The Story of Triumph Sports Cars, and note that he says Triumph took it upon themselves to soften the car. That suggests that Triumph made an assumption about what the American market would want. Meanwhile, Michael Cook, who was working for Triumph in the United States when the GT6 was introduced, notes the soft suspension settings supposedly for the American market, although there is no record that Triumph's U.S. company asked for them. And Cook declares, the UK and European road testers were right that the rear suspension would have to be changed, but wrong in their assumption that the USA wanted the soft settings. So Cook denies that the US requested the soft suspension settings that the GT6 Mark I came with. These quotes are from Cook's book, The Triumph Spitfire, which was published in 1981. So Robson writes, Triumph assumed that Americans would want this, and so that's what they made. And Cook emphasizes, hey, we in America didn't ask for this. And I find that amusing. I know that I've seen where Mike Cook talked about how the communication between Triumph and England and the operation in America was not that great, this may be a prime example of that. So that's all the cleanup work that I had planned for this video. Probably screwed something up in this video that I'll need to clean up later, but we'll deal with that later. I have already started to put together some things for my next video, which will cover some recent acquisitions to my Triumph library and some other Triumph related items that I've collected recently. I hope to have that out in the next week or two. I've also been putting things together for a couple of other videos that are a little further out in the future. We'll see how long it takes for me to get to those things. But in the meantime, please take care, and thanks for watching.